I'm thankful to the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture and Eastern Zonal Cultural Center for inviting me this evening to deliver the speech on Swami Vivekananda. I extend my heartiest gratitude to Srimati Gauri Basu, the Director, ASCC, Sri Ranjan Mittal, the Secretary of Sri Aurobindo Institute of Culture, and our beloved Shotoda Swami Shupananandaji Maharaj, the Secretary of this Institute of Culture. And I extend my gratitude to all of you, those who are here to attend this ceremony this auspicious day. So since the time is given to me is 15 minutes, I'll try to cover up the entire idea of Swami Vivekananda and his social philosophy of love and service. Since this is a structured lecture, because I think that I must not go beyond the time given to me. However, sometimes I may use some Bengali words on certain issues. The immense contribution of Swami Vivekananda to the moral and social philosophy of India and the rest of the world are sometimes overlooked. His ideas has a strong influence on social, religious and political leaders. In fact, freedom fighters who lived between the end of 19th century and the beginning of 20th century were influenced by Vivekananda. The freedom fighters had either his photo or books. The British government described him as a tough politician who took cover in saffron robes. Even Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the Indian nation, was also a strong follower of Swami Vivekananda, which is evident from K. Swaminathan's editorial, who was the editor-in-chief of the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi, who said, Gandhi essentially belongs to the line of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa and Swami Vivekananda, and as if by divine wish. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was also greatly influenced by Swami Vivekananda. We all know the story that the idea of eternity, what Swami Vivekananda developed, inspired Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose greatly. The Vivekananda's objections to the ancient caste system and hatred among the various ethnic groups were attempts at social reform, what we see today. A generation of scholars, Pandits, mystics, Hindu sects, and even other religions have either openly embraced or acknowledged Swami Vivekananda's teaching of unity and peace. His travels abroad fostered a rapid spread of his messages of religious harmony, especially among the Indian diaspora. The legacy of his visit is evident in the Ramakrishna Math and Mission, which he founded in 1897. Modern India found its savior in Swami Vivekananda, who was born in 1863 and died in 1902 at a relatively young age of 39 years. This new prophet's influence on the society was indeed dynamic, welcome, and more opportune, peaking during a period of social and political and turmoil in the Asian subcontinent. Vivekananda was an expositor of the teachings of the Vedanta. His teachings, philosophy and thinking reflected a soul willing to rescue India from the moral, spiritual and social doldrums that had completely enveloped it during previous centuries. Indeed, Vivekananda's austere life of piety, combined with his penetrating analysis of India's socio-political and religious difficulties, placed him among the pioneers who led India along the road of self-determination in modern times. In a letter written to Srimati Mrinalini Bose on 3rd January 1899, Vivekananda wrote, "Now it is the question is it good for the public at large that social rules are framed or no new society is formed? Many reply to this in affirmative. Some again may hold that it is not so. Some men, being comparatively powerful, slowly bring all others under their control and by stratagem, force, or adroitness gain their own objects. If this be true, what can be the meaning of the statement that there is danger in giving liberty to the ignorant? What again is the meaning of the liberty? In the same letter, Vivekananda replied to the own questions he has raised. Liberty does not certainly means the absence of restraints in the path of misappropriation of wealth, etc. by you and me, but it is our natural right to be allowed to use our own body, intelligence, or wealth according to our will without doing any harm to others. And all the members of the society ought to have the same opportunity for obtaining wealth, education, or knowledge. Vivekananda said, one should raise the self by the self. Let each one work out own salvation, freedom in all matters. That is advanced towards mukti is the worthiest gain of men. Those social rules which stand in the way of the unfoldment of this freedom are injurious, and steps should be taken to destroy them speedily. Those social institutions should be encouraged by which men advance in the path of freedom. One of the ideas when he was writing about modern India is important here. In this context, Vivekananda is saying, the individual's life is in the life of the whole. The individual's happiness is in the happiness of the whole. Apart from the whole, the individual's existence is incomplete. This is an eternal truth and is the bedrock on which the universe is built. To move slowly towards the infinite whole, bearing a constant feeling of intense sympathy and sameness with it, being happy with his happiness and being distressed in his affliction is the individual's sole duty. And this is the idea on which Vivekananda wanted to build India. In the land of religious diversity, Vivekananda was able to diffuse and delay a violent conflict among the religions in India. Vivekananda was able to offer a perspective that may be acceptable to all religions. In London in 1900, he preached about unity in diversity, drawing references from the main religious works, the Bible, Quran, Upanishads, the Vedas. In his talk, The Real Nature of Man, during this era, there were certain attitudes prevalent in India that adverse consequences of any religious compromise, such as the church worked as a wing of imperial control and imposed humility. Islam enforced conversion by compulsion and threats. An underlying theme in Swami Vivekananda's lectures is an emphasized need for religious harmonization. His comparative approach and reference to Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindus was a concerted effort to establish a commonality among these world religions. The Swami even added the conviction that Shiva Linga, converted into a cross would form a shape of the Christian cross. In India, some of its worst enemies were Christian missionaries who were distraught at the work of the Swami Vivekananda because he had put an end to their era of unchallenged supremacy. Undoubtedly, Vivekananda was feared by persons who denounced the Hindu religion as heathenism and followers as heathens. On September 11, 1893, at the World Parliament of Religions held in Chicago, Vivekananda made a profound statement on the state of religion. He believed that if there is ever to be a universal religion, it must be which will have no location in place or time, which will be infinite, like a God it will preach, which will not to be Brahminic, the Buddhist, Christians, or Mohammedan. but the sum total of all these and still have infinite space for development. This was one of his many public appeals to emphasize the common ground among religions and reconcile differences. It is obvious that in his quest for the regeneration of India, Vivekananda believed that religion should be more dynamic, that sectarianism and the further fragmentation of Hinduism was inimical to social solidarity. This was believed to be necessary because the Indian people needed to cultivate faith and view themselves as a total community. Additionally, Vivekananda believed that Sri Ramakrishna practiced all the different ideas of religion to demonstrate that each leads to one truth. এখানে কোনো এক জায়গায় বিবেকানন্দ বলছেন বুদ্ধের প্রাসঙ্গিকতা, বলছে ভারতবাসী উত্তর ভারত বা দক্ষিণ ভারত বিফ খাওয়া ছেড়ে দিয়েছে, তার কারণ এটা নয় ধর্ম তাকে জোর করেছে। সেখানে তিনি বুদ্ধের কণ্ঠস্বরের কথা বলছেন। বুদ্ধ বলেছিলেন এবং বুদ্ধ তার কণ্ঠ দিয়ে হিপনোটাইজ করেছিল সামগ্রিক ভারতবর্ষকে। ঠিক যে কথা স্বামী বিবেকানন্দ বর্তমান ভারতের পরিচালনার ক্ষেত্রে বলছেন, জোর নয়। Towards the end of the 19th century, one of the India's most serious problems was its escalating religious tensions and rivalry. The conflicts between Hinduism and Islam became more acute with increasing accusations among the Muslims and Christians that the Hindus practiced idol worship and infanticide. His identification of parallel trains and similar beliefs among the religions frequently appeared in his lectures. His aim to incorporate the many sects into a unified entity did not materialize because of powerful countervailing forces implanted by the British that fostered insularity among the peoples of different religions. The stratification of Indian society into 5 classes or varna had created misery and unhappiness for centuries. The maintenance of the rigid caste system with its different subcastes, that is jati, and particular prescriptions made it difficult for the lower classes to gain social mobility. Vivekananda saw the dire need to dismantle this system and uplift sections of the opposing society. Vivekananda strongly advocated that any societal groups that were uneducated or confined to the lower caste ought to be brought up to par with the society as a whole. In explaining the work of Ramakrishna Mission in the regeneration of India, Vivekananda argued that revolts will occur and Brahmins, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas will be produced, but the Shudra caste will not exist as their work will be done by missions. Such thoughts on social reform later influenced Gandhi, who renamed the outcasts Harijan, that is the children of God, and brought the social evils of the caste system into center stage. Despite Swami Vivekananda's attempt to defend the rights and dignity of persons in the caste system, he saw it has created stability in the Indian society. It had some semblance of unity due to interdependence of the classes in terms of their duties and functions. These perceptions probably stemmed from his Brahmin theology that did not believe in social mobility. He also voiced his opinion on certain customs, such as the denial of child widows to marry, because he considered marriage a duty rather than a privilege. In India's struggle against colonialism in the early 20th century, Swami Vivekananda inspired his people as they resisted British oppression and set the motion, the march to freedom. As a great revolutionary, his subtle message contained the patriotic fervor that was to awaken an otherwise subdued people. This inspiration and guidance coming from a respected and holy person was the inspiration and encouragement that India needed to surge ahead in the goal toward complete freedom. Vivekananda's teaching were often directed at India herself, as he believed that the continent's degeneration was hinged on such factors such as materialism, superstition, neglect of the masses, and the habit of speaking rather than taking decisive action. Vivekananda reminded India of an ancient splendor and heritage that should both serve as an inspiration and imbue confidence in her to meet modern challenges. Vivekananda also focused on another important factor, contributing to India's degeneration, the hatred for each other. His undying belief that no man, no nation can hate others and live was relevant to India, especially with its rigid social stratification and limited social mobility. His message transversed the boundaries of all religions and classes and ethnic groups. He repented the wisdom of Sri Ramakrishna in dealing with the hypocrisy of religious persons, criticized no one. For all doctrines and creeds have some good in them. Show by your lives that religion does not mean words or names or sects, but it means spiritual realization. During India's period of religious and political turmoil, Vivekananda's teachings gained prominence despite an increasing hatred, the polarization of classes, an unstable economic atmosphere, and feelings of inferiority. Indeed, his tasks of improving and reforming India seem more onerous. The Swami Vivekananda style of preaching and mode of imparting wisdom in a humble manner can be linked to Jesus Christ's style of teaching. And like Christ, Vivekananda failed to provide immediate reform in society. Vivekananda was also an idealist and believed his master's character was the perfect ideal that everyone should strive for in this age. Turbulent events such as the later partition of India and Pakistan and deepening divisions within the Hindu community were strong indications that Vivekananda's teachings were, unfortunately, not fully appreciated. India had probably not reached the stage of development to readily implement and grasp the true genius of Swami Vivekananda. His solution for the generation of India was incompatible with the political rivalries of the moderates, princes, the extremists, amidst economic and social turmoil. India would have been more responsive to revolutionary thought involving aggression and physical removal of the British. Vivekananda's call for patriotism, equality, and humility did not directly appeal to the masses. The Indian society could not fully grasp Vivekananda's use of the principles of Vedanta religion to remove colonialism and usher in that modernity and peace long desired. The prevalence of social vices, like gambling, horse racing, and prostitution created serious societal problems. In advocating social changes, Vivekananda sought to remove the darkness from India, reveal a true inner beauty, and create an atmosphere to shake off the shackles of the British colonialism and imperialism. He appeared as Yug Pravartak, arising to the call and demand of the Kali Yug period, and his role was to improve the status of Hinduism and that of humanity in general. Indeed, Swamiji's unique style frequently fused the religious with the secular. His mission incorporated removing ignorance, replacing evil with good, assimilating the old with the new, and attempting to bind the people of the entire world. Vivekananda held a radical, all-compassing view, a universalism that every idea has to become broad till it covers the whole world. Every aspiration must go on increasing till it engulfs the whole humanity. He genuinely believed that there was a need for practical Vedanta that would be practical and ensure it eventually become part of our lives. Some of the principles of Gandhi were influenced by Vivekananda's fundamental views of self-confidence. Furthermore, his concept of Vedanta reflected many similarities with many of the existing ideologies, democratic vision of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. The Swami Vivekananda's philosophy that every individual should be righteous, self-contained, independent, and self-respecting assisted many of the philosophers in this land, India, including the Gandhian principles involving confidence and faith were assimilated from Vivekananda's philosophy and were pivotal in the struggle for the independence of India. Swami Vivekananda cannot be seen in isolation, but in the context of the socio-religious reform movements simultaneously occurring in British India. These developments added a dimension of social service to Hinduism that had not previously existed under British rule. The mentor of Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, had many distinguished visitors, including Keshav Chandra Sen, the head of the Brahmo Samaj. This organization, founded in 1833, had as its goal education, creating self-confidence, and opposing idol worship and the caste system. Similarly, the Arya Samaj began in 1875 denounced idolatry, the caste system. This sect was founded by Swami Vivekananda Saraswati and was the only movement existing for that time to undertake the challenges of the Swami to reform Indian society. Following in the journey of these reform movements, the Vivekananda was to a certain extent influenced by their goals and teachings. He placed the existing knowledge of Vedanta in alignment with the ancient traditions to give stability, strength to Hinduism. Vivekananda, the courageous disciple of the saint of the Kileshwar, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, gave a new impetus to Ramakrishna mission. This institution provided education, boosted the spirit of Hinduism, and provided a social service to the entire world. As an unofficial ambassador of India, Vivekananda embarked on a mission to read the Western mind of the unconceived, erroneous, and prejudicial views about India and Hinduism. His overseas tours to the United States and London were aimed at eradicating the doubts, fears, the ignorance of many foreigners, some of which are outlined in his classic memoirs of European travel. To the Western, the Swamiji's philosophical discourse was not the abstract and impractical as traditional Eastern philosophy often appeared. Indeed, Swami Vivekananda's task as a true revealer and missionary for India was made more difficult by perceptions of India as a backward land of disease, caste system, famine, and communal violence. Undoubtedly, Vivekananda's role in educating others at home and abroad on the concept of Hinduism was a boon to India. His lectures on Karma Yoga served to illuminate the power of mind as it emphasized duty and self-control to concepts lacking throughout the modern world. His simple message to the others was that all good acts make us pure and perfect, while different paths of work, love, psychology, and knowledge all lead to the same God. In his Karma Yoga, Swami Vivekananda endorsed the changes that India was slowly undergoing and warned that we should always try to help the world, and that should be the highest motive, but that this world was not made that you or I should come and help it. To what extent were the teachings of Swami Vivekananda really integrated and adopted by Indians? That remains a question. Suspicion between us, caste rivalries, political assassinations, sectarian violence, tribal rivalries continue today and pose a formidable challenge to peace within India. Even though he has been epitomized by Rabindranath Tagore. If you want to understand India, study Vivekananda. In him, everything is positive. There are certain shortcomings in his work. First, he should have spent more time in India and attempt to harness more resources in confronting social problems. Second, he was a good writer and speaker, but his ability as a dynamic leader in forcing social reforms and effectiveness in assisting at the grassroots levels can be seriously questioned and even refuted. But nevertheless, it was beyond the human ability for one man in a relatively short lifetime and with limited resources to unravel the injustices and heal the scores of India that has been festering for centuries. It was difficult for someone seeking such attributes as truth and justice on spiritual dimension to penetrate the Indian psyche after centuries of oppressive rule and suddenly transform the mode of life. Vivekananda was able to guide India through a transitional period. But more men of his stature were needed to continually emphasize the wisdom and teachings of the religious texts. He accepted that. His work laid the foundation, both intellectual and moral, for leaders to valiantly struggle for India's independence. His personal life was a true demonstration of self-discipline, simplicity, and dedication to the improvement of humanity. By absorbing the outpourings of his Guru, Sri Ramakrishna, the Swami was able to leave a golden legacy for the peoples of India and the world. Indeed, he proved to be an inspiration, both at home and abroad, as his revolutionary ideologies transformed the political and social landscape of India. The sterling character of Vivekananda reveals that India never lacked the spiritual giants to prove that India was a land of philosophy, ethics, and spirituality. He provided a model for India in the 20th century with his rediscovery of certain basic tenets of Hinduism and the idea of the soul's immortality that was the common denominator among the world's religions. I thank you all for your patience, and in brief, I've tried to analyze Vivekananda's idea of social philosophy, love and service. Thank you.